Welcome to Extra Takes, hosted by Northland Church Senior Pastor Dr. Joshua Laxton. Join us each week as Pastor Josh reveals the rest of the story behind his sermons. We'll discuss how those who follow Christ can live out a biblical vision for the church in our world today.
Well, hello, Northland family and friends. Hey, welcome to another episode of Extra Takes. I am your long-lost co-host. It's been a while.
Nice to meet you. I'm Matt.
Hey, Matt. I am Josh.
Welcome back.
Yes, it's good to be back.
We're in the studio. It's been like 3.5 months.
I guess the last time I even did it, I did it from the beach.
From the beach.
I did. So here we go. I'm live and in person.
There's nothing like having you here in person.
How about that? I don't know about that.
Define nothing like, right?
Exactly. Please tell me what you mean by that. So, well, hey, it's good to be here, and it's good to kind of dive in to this past weekend's message.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I was overwhelmed by it before I even preached it, which is part of the reason why I probably preached it with a lot of gusto and intensity.
Well, it's fascinating because you have spent so much time, energy, effort preparing for this next series that we're jumping into next week.
Yeah.
Right? But this was a zinger.
Yeah.
Wow. This one-off, yeah.
Here, it was kind of funny. Here's in the back of my mind, I was thinking, all right, not that people came, I just know that summers are different, and they're intentional.
Yeah.
They're intentional. So I don't plan on changing that kind of method or series, but I just know it's different. So in my mind, in the back of my mind, I was like, well, if anybody ever thought I forgot how to preach, no, I didn't. So I know how to tackle a passage and go verse by verse.
I love it.
And, so I was going to
I'm going to talk about grace and sin, and I'm going verse by verse.
Come on now.
I'm about to teach and circle a lot of words.
Exactly. So just if you thought I forgot.
I like that.
So.
All right. Now we can point to that sermon. Go watch that one.
Yeah.
I love that.
But that's part of
because that message was very different than what we did the last 2 months.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and that's what I want people to know and be okay with it and appreciate the different styles, the different methods, but teaching the word. So it's just a different, in the education world, pedagogy. I'm going to use this in the summer, but man, listen. At the core, here's what I love to do. I mean, I love to take a passage and just let's pick it apart. And it was so dense. Like I showed you how you do a study, kind of through Romans. Like the first pass is kind of what I showed you.
Right. I love that. So this is the story of the human race, and this is in Romans 5:12 through 19, August 8th, 9th, and 10th, 2026. So I'll give us the outline and we will dive in. The main point was the Bible is the diagnostic and prescriptive tool that teaches the human race where we came from, where we are going, and the cure for rewiring our lives and changing our future. And you walked us through 4 things that we see in this passage. So first, Adam and the human race. Then we looked at Jesus and the human race. Then we considered which human race do we belong to, because you really set up this question of, Adam or Jesus. There's 2 human races, which one, Adam or Jesus? And then finally, you asked the question, how do you know you belong to Christ? So it was interesting. We had this family moment, and before the family moment, we got up after worship, and you were talking about your 3-hour bike ride. And you're doing a Half Ironman in September, but you really connected for us. And I had somebody quoting to me last night, just keep pedaling, just keep pedaling. So it certainly resonated with so many of us. But this idea of when you just keep pedaling, when you just keep worshiping in the highs and lows, that is doing something in you. So talk about how that moment transpired. Did you plan to do it Saturday night, or did it just happen, or what did that look like?
No, it just happened. I was supposed to come on stage and pray after that mess, after that song.
As you do.
So, which, me, I'm always thinking, well, what's the best way to transition?
Yeah.
What's the best way to transition?
Yeah.
So that's where it came from.
That will feel
and I really did go through that, though, that day. I'm like, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? But that's why I love endurance training. That it truly is discipline. It truly is mental. You have to train your mind. And so next year, I believe, don't quote me on it, but I believe I'm being led the direction of tackling, the verse, but we have the mind of Christ, and building out a series around how does our actual mind change when we become a believer?
Oh, okay.
Because you've got to train, because that's part, again, I love about endurance is that you're going to be thinking a lot of things like, listen, no one's paying me to do this. I'm not going to, go into the Guinness World Book of Records. I can still be healthy and just work out an hour a day. Right. I don't have to train for 70.3 or 140.6. But there's this mind shift that has to happen. Yeah. And I think that, it's not that I think, I know that that's what happens in the Christian life, because we even see Matthew 13 is that some seed fell on just the road where the birds came and picked it up, and it doesn't even have a chance to survive. Yeah. Then there are some that fall on rocky soil and the thorns and thistles, and then so there's this element that there's only one kind of, when I say faith, and that's centered around Jesus, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Yeah. And so that's where it came from.
And I love the honesty of you saying, I don't know if it was the 1 hour or 2 hour mark, this is stupid, right? Because of your discipline and how regimented you are, we can believe, you just love doing that.
No, I mean, again.
So hear that, right? You talk about, sometimes I think we can falsely believe that, the things of the faith and the spiritual disciplines of our faith should come easily and naturally, and if they don't, there's something wrong.
Yeah. No, you are learning, and this is even part that goes into the message. You're learning now that you have been given a new nature, a new center. Yeah. Your mind and heart has been completely, powerfully shifted and transformed. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that there's not this residue, that there's been this kind of ingrained pattern that has been broken, but the residue's still there. And that's part of and we're going to get into that in the series. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to start there. Yeah, because we're going to get into how do you deal with pressure, how do you deal with stress, because it actually includes a training regimen, a discipline regimen. There's got to be a pattern that is formed.
Yeah, and you said that because praise is the building block of new creation. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. All right, so let's look at, actually, before we move on, I want to ask you a takeaway. So what was a big takeaway from preparing and or preaching this message in Romans?
I probably would say the biggest takeaway that I never thought about, and which is part of where that image came from of the massive tsunami wave.
The tidal wave, yeah.
Because somebody was even telling me, somebody here had once talked about how, and even created a jail cell, and that Jesus has freed you. But sometimes we want to stay in that jail cell. No, here's what Paul's saying. That jail cell has been completely destroyed. Now, you might have a muscle memory that goes back to what once was, but it's no longer there. The power, the dominion, the reign, it has been completely destroyed. Wow. So there is a residue, which is why I wanted, but that's probably the biggest takeaway, that it made sense of why, okay, so Paul gets into chapter 7 and he will say things like, well, what I do, I don't want to do. What I don't want to do, I do. And so he's struggling with this idea that the residue of sin is still there, but it has been completely destroyed, because anytime he does what he doesn't want to do, or what he doesn't want to do, he does. Again, it's the same thing but said different, flip-flop. Is that the Spirit of God brings this overwhelming conviction, not condemnation, but conviction that reminds them that's not who you are. And I'm like, okay, so it's not that we will never struggle with sin. It's just that the true power, the dominion, the reign, the REIGN, not the RAIN, but the reign of sin no longer exists. The framework, the prison door, it's not there. That's what so because that is what Paul, he's given this juxtaposition that you are dead and now you are alive. There has been this complete transfer and this complete transformation. That was my biggest takeaway.
Awesome. So you preached in the New Testament. Does that mean we're out of the Old Testament? Did we graduate? Or we?
Well, we never graduate. You never graduate. You go back and forth.
I was just baiting you on that one.
I mean, Paul went back there. He went back there.
But we're in the New Testament. This is what's current.
He does it. He goes boom to Jesus, boom to Jesus, boom to Jesus.
Kind of like what you do. Are you calling yourself Paul?
Yeah. Paul says, I follow Christ.
Okay.
So that's what I'm doing. So in the new series, I'm anchoring it in Luke 22. So it's going to be New Testament based, but there will be some kind of fallbacks, or callbacks.
Yeah. How many messages until we get back into Genesis?
I might make a quick appearance, a brief appearance this coming
week 1. Yes,
I might. I haven't finished it yet.
All right, so we're going to be listening for that.
So
Genesis 1, 2, and 3, or somewhere else in Genesis.
Well, it would be chapter 3 because that's where pressure and stress is.
There you go. Okay,
so
that's where it originated, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So let's look at first Adam and the human race. You walked us through a few terms, this idea of sin, and you defined for us it's missing the mark. You talked for us trespass, and that's crossed in line, and then you talked about death. And what can we learn from understanding each of those definitions?
I mean, the biggest thing, and again, because here's what I believe: if you and this would, how am I trying? So this would connect if you're an unbeliever at a church, and connect if you've been a believer for a long time. Is that we use sin, but a lot of times we don't define it.
And it carries so much baggage, so much emotional and spiritual baggage.
So that's why I kept on hammering. I mean, so sin was, sin's the nail, but I kept on hammering the unraveling of supreme love for God, that you supremely love yourself. That's the essence of sin. And when you are now by your very nature a sinner, where you have supreme love for self and you don't have supreme love for God, then it is natural to cross the line. But this is part of where I wanted to, say, and I said it in a couple of the gatherings. But when you look at the Pharisees and Sadducees, and particularly the Pharisees, Paul was a Pharisee before he was converted. So he kept the law. So there were so many things in his life where he didn't cross the line. Where he wasn't, he didn't break the Sabbath. He kept much of the law in perfection. But the reason why he did it was supreme love for self, not supreme love for God, because I'm going to do all of these things with the aim of God receiving me because I have not crossed the line. Well, so this is part of where, though, when you are a sinner by your very nature, it is natural to cross the line, but the other element is, when you look at Paul and even Pharisees, they may have not murdered someone, even though the Pharisees did murder Jesus because of the pressure and stress they were under. But when you have anger and bitterness towards your brother and sister, which they did have, what did they do? They committed murder. Yeah. So this is part of where they did cross the line. But they were looking at just in some sense, the black and white, element of don't commit adultery or do not murder. But what they would do is they would murder somebody with their mind and with their thoughts. They would commit adultery in the lust. Yeah.
And that's where the Sermon on the Mount was.
And that's what so that's part of where, again, that originates, that crossing the line originates with the sin, the missing the mark, the unraveling of supreme love for God.
Yeah, and it's all about getting to the core of heart belief versus actions. Yeah.
So and this is part of where God is not asking you to show up to church because you're trying to earn something. He's wanting you to show up to be with the church because you love Him.
Yeah.
He's wanting you to pray not because you are demonstrating your spirituality. He wants you to pray because you love Him. He wants you to and that's where religion completely misses the mark.
It is interesting because it can feel like we can drift into being Pharisaical, especially when we don't feel it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's one thing when our heart's in it and we feel it, and then we can have this heart devotion to Him. But sometimes when we don't feel it, we just have to get our bodies in the right spot.
Yeah.
But we have to be careful not to drift into this. What I am doing is the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
It's obviously about a relationship.
Well, and this goes again, Adam, and one of the things too, I would stress now on the podcast is, he talks about Adam and Moses.
Yeah.
So Adam is the pattern of humans, the individuality. So he gives you the pattern of the human race. Israel gives you the pattern of a national a race, in some sense of a people. So what Adam is to every human race, Israel is to every ethnic group, every national body, every tribe. So that's part of where in both Adam and even Moses, there's the exposure of we got humans individual and humans as ethnic, national, tribal kind of group represented in Israel. We're all sinners and we have all committed trespass and we all deserve death.
Yeah.
Which is part of the New Testament theology. New Testament meaning New Covenant. So where now Adam and Israel are absorbed. When I say are absorbed, are in some sense replaced through Jesus being the greater Adam and the greater Israel. Is that where Adam and Israel failed in sin and trespass, leading to death? Jesus hit the mark, is the mark, in bringing the gift and grace of God in His death and resurrection.
Yeah.
So and that's part of where the church now is the carved out new human like group, and part of this new human group are these new creatures in Christ.
Yeah.
So you have Christians that now comprise of the church. So Adam and Israel have now been fulfilled. What they failed to do has been fulfilled faithfully in Jesus, which is why you have now Christians and church. Adam, Israel.
Yeah, that's really interesting, really helpful about the pattern, Adam and Moses. So let's look at Jesus in the human race. We talked about this idea of grace, gift, and abundant provision. Man, that idea of abundant provision was just so rich and so impactful. And you discussed, why is grace so much greater than sin? It is interesting that we have to make sure that we don't just see, grace and sin as equivalent to each other. But grace is so much more, and that's where you gave us these 3 reasons: that grace gives what one doesn't deserve, grace requires the innocent to pay, and finally, grace changes the guilty status forever. So when we see those, they are not weighed equally on a scale. What I wanted to pull out here is, under grace requires the innocent to pay. I mean, we talk about sin and missing the mark, and just this idea of unraveling of the supreme love of God. And I love how you stated that Jesus never had that unraveling of the supreme love of God. So I love thinking about that definition and rereading the Gospels and looking for, because as you drill down later, this idea of discipleship is learning what it means to be human after the image and likeness of Jesus. So as we are rereading the Gospels and looking at those stories, we can be looking for where was that unraveling of the supreme love of God demonstrated through people and the disciples, and then where did Jesus not do that? I mean, we see that all throughout, right? Yeah. We see so many different examples. We see that in the temptation in the wilderness and all throughout. So just that phrasing, I feel like, is a really great handle for us to have in our mind when we're looking at reading through the gospel. So what do you have to say about this idea of grace being so much greater than sin?
Just so that Matt has my Bible.
Yeah.
What did I do to my Bible?
Oh, you did what? Okay, so you were watching. He had a lot of fun with the TV, right? He did the circles. He did the underlines. That's right in his Bible.
Yeah, I can attest to it. And I actually circled it in highlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself doing that often?
It depends on what passage.
Yeah.
I mean, but you get these repeated words.
This one's very rich for that, right? It just kind of jumped out.
And so obviously, if there's these repeated words, that's the main thought. And one of the things that Paul does is that, now you have to realize that when he's writing this, he intends this letter to be read at one setting. Let's let that sink in, okay? He intends for this letter to be read in one setting. So now you might get a fast reader that can get through in 35 minutes, or you might have a slow reader that wants to pause. You might be there for some time. And you might be there for some time. But so you have to realize that, so he might be moving pretty quickly on topics and themes. So that's where you got, grace, gift, grace, but then he's going to go rain, grace. So that's part of why you're breaking it down. And this is just one snippet of Romans. And Romans is a very dense book, But yeah, when I started circling that, I'm like, because again, it's not to say that he's not saying trespass in those, but I mean, he is hammering grace and gift, and using different words for those.
I love that part that you were drawing out. I mean, we could have spent all day on just that, digging into all the different words and the definitions and where what they meant.
Elsewhere.
And absolutely, yeah, that was awesome. So this idea of grace is just so much more greater than sin, and just this abundant provision that we have in Jesus. So let's look at this third point: which human race do you belong to? And that's where this idea of the tidal wave of God's grace came up. I wrote down this statement. You said, you do not work your way to grace, you faith your way into grace by identifying in Jesus' death. And then you went on to talk about, and obviously we then also identify with him in his resurrection. Man, that phrase, I'm not sure if I've ever heard it stated that way. Obviously, you don't work your way to grace. That's a pretty common thing for understand, but this idea of you faith your way into grace. Did you use that previously?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah. Where that just came from your spirit this week.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Because it's such a great way to describe it. I mean, we talk often the real big distinction between Christianity and every other religion, and just even this seeming balance of faith and works, and making sure that they are ordered correctly.
Yeah.
And if we misorder them, then we realize that we are working our way. But if we are faithing our way into grace, it changes the whole story.
And it's important to understand what your faith is in. And that's where that third point came in. What is your faith in? Like, what are you saying? My confidence, my trust,
your belief, confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. What is it in? What am I attaching myself to? Because that becomes now the object of what I believe. And again, then you break down once again that faith framework.
I love
this is my worldview. This is my mission. These are my ethics. These are my spiritual disciplines. But this is who my faith. This is what my faith is in.
Yeah.
And so as Christians, I don't think I've ever. And that was maybe probably a second big takeaway. Okay, what is it? What am I really putting, my faith in when I'm actually putting my faith in Jesus, particularly knowing that His death and resurrection has saved me.
Yeah.
And so, just methodically building that out was the first time I think I've ever done that.
Well, that's where that faith framework can be helpful, because for some of us, we may just default to, hey, faith is just these spiritual practices. I need to have my morning quiet time. I need to, pray daily, and it's so much more than that, which helps us when we don't feel it.
Yeah, yeah.
And when we're having a hard time being consistent with our spiritual disciplines, faith, and you can go back and look at and lean on that faith framework. It's so much deeper than that. And making sure that we have Jesus in the center.
Yeah.
Because if He's not in the center, there's idolatry, and we have switched it up somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the third one, and then this fourth one. How do you know you belong to Christ? Man, this one was a doozy. There was some depth here.
Before we get there, we'll go back because I want to even make sure that we're clear on the baptism part. So I said this on Monday. I don't think I said it in any other gathering.
Yeah.
So baptism, when most believers, church people think of baptism, they think about the waters. And so we're going to get baptized or we're going to get sprinkled. Now the reason why I'm not the biggest fan of sprinkling, because the Greek word baptizo actually means immersion.
Yeah.
And so when we baptize here, we put people under the water and then we bring them out of the water. Mm-hmm. And so that is when we think of baptism, that's what we think about. Now, this is not what Paul has in mind in Romans 5.
Right.
Now, again, baptism, the actual practice of baptism is a reflection of what Paul's talking about, but he's not talking about the waters, which is part of, in that image, you saw some waters, but I didn't mention the waters. Because it's not about the waters right now. It's not about the act of the symbolism.
It's not the individual sacrament. Yeah.
It's about, okay, now I've been immersed. I've been united, and that's where even Paul's getting at. Baptism, buried, united. He's making sure that you understand that your faith in Jesus has attached you, has immersed you into His life, And as a result of being immersed into his life, united into his life, you're also united in his death. Now, what does that mean? Well, that's why I'll walk through that. That means that you are immersing yourself as he's the king, he's the savior, he's the Messiah. You're immersing yourself into the fact that he is the sinless sacrifice. You're immersing yourself into the fact that he paid your sin debt. You're not pointing out to anybody else. Yes, he paid their sin debt too, but no, you are now taking ownership of. I nailed him to the. He actually took my sin. He took my death. He paid the price, death, that I should have paid. So he paid my. So you now personalize it, and then you believe that he breathed his last. Like he actually died as a result of taking your sin debt, because that was the wage. That was the wage of sin that God had told Adam. If you eat from this tree, you shall surely die. Okay, so death was coming. So Jesus had to breathe his last. So he died for sin and thus sinners. Okay, so I'm immersing my life into the fact that when Jesus died, I died. Now, but the I that died was the sinner that died, because he died. This is what Paul would write elsewhere. He who knew no sin became sin so that we might become the righteousness of God. So Jesus died as the sinless sacrifice, but died for the sin of the world. And so he breathed his last because he took on the punishment that I deserve. But here's the thing about faith is that I'm immersing myself into the fact that when Jesus died for my sin, I died to my sin. That's a good one. When Jesus died for my sin, I died to my sin. This is what Paul's saying right here. And then he also picks that up also in Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. I am crucified with Christ. So Jesus was crucified for the sin of the world. I am crucified to my sin that I'm doing in the world. Okay? So, but then Paul's like, but Jesus didn't stay dead. Yeah. He rose from the dead. Okay, so, and this is where Paul would say elsewhere, first fruits of new creation. So what the resurrection of Jesus exposes is that now, because his sinless sacrifice had paid the sin debt, he now is raised to the newness of life, and thus ushering in new creation. So that's why in baptism we are buried with Christ. The old Josh died, but now the new Josh rose when Jesus rose from the dead. Okay, and so that's where Paul is getting at. If we were united with him, immersed in him in his death, we're actually going to be united and immersed with him in his resurrection. And as a result now, because Jesus, when he died ultimately, and I've said this elsewhere, he ultimately died not just to save you and me. He ultimately died for the supreme love for the Father. That's what we see in Luke 22. Not my will, but yours be done. Yeah. I love you. Whatever you want, I'm going to do, even if it's hard for me to swallow. Okay? So now, because he died and we have now been buried with him, now we've been raised to him, now his heart, his aim becomes our heart and our aim. And would we say that Jesus perfectly and faithfully had supreme love for the Father? Absolutely. So that becomes our heart, and now this new pattern we've got to learn. So that's part of where sin died. We died to sin. How can we live in this pattern of wanting to supremely love ourselves when the grace and the gift of God in Jesus' death and resurrection has completely destroyed that person?
Yeah. Should we keep on sinning? By no means.
So, So that's really what I was trying to truly develop in chapter 3 in the third point.
Third point, yeah.
And then it moves into, okay, well, how do I know I did that? So because that's how you get into Jesus, is that you just faith your way into it. Yeah. Is that you believe in his death and resurrection. But if you believe in his death and resurrection, those four things, that's what you're going to believe.
Yeah. Yeah, and you talked about in this fourth point, this full-time versus part-time. Talk about the gig economy.
Yeah.
You had a lot of a lot of bold statements to us in that fourth one. You talked about being a slave and what that means, owned by another, under another's authority, no autonomy and allegiant, loyal to the owner, and then this idea of sanctification, and then this idea of God's exclusivity for his mission, and then discipleship and evangelism. So a couple quotes I wrote down. You said, Americans want salvation without sanctification. I think that speaks to this part-time desire of wanting to follow him.
We want to be saved without a transfer of ownership.
But we want transformation.
No, we don't even. I would say that many Americans, they want transformation that suits them. They don't want transformation that pleases Christ.
Transformation that we can control.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. They want salvation without the transfer of ownership. They want to still be in charge. That's why. So the rhetorical questions that the rhetorical questions that Paul answers are questions that people were asking. Well, hey, listen, if you're telling me that grace is this, can we just keep on sinning?
Right.
So that grace may increase. And he's like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
That's America. That's American Christians. Hey, we want Jesus to save us, but this is another image that I always like to say, because we love we love the Marvel comics, we love the DC comics. So it's like Superman swooping in to save us from an oncoming bus. We're like, thank you, Superman, but we keep on doing our thing.
Yeah.
So it's not like we worship Superman and we have now this completely loyalty and allegiance to him. It's kind of like, thank you for saving us. We want to go on our way. That's what we think about when we think about Savior, which is part of the reason why I accompany Savior with King and Messiah. No. It's a new authority. It's a new ownership. It's no longer, hey, you saved me. Thank you, Jack Bauer. Thank you, Batman. And it's a transfer of ownership, which is why I needed to go back to Luke 9, just to kind of almost remind people that what Jesus was saying is that it's a you're no longer in the picture, is what he says. You're no longer in the picture. What you want, no longer in the picture.
Yeah, because Luke 9 says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross daily, and follow me.
Yeah, and I can tell you, our American culture does not teach the value or the concept of denial.
Yeah, that's foolishness.
The only time it will teach it is if you're wanting to do something that improves you. So yes, if you want to lose weight, you've got to deny yourself that donut. Or if you want to get, healthy, you've got to deny yourself, somewhere during the day that I'm going to deny myself sitting in the recliner. Now I'm going to go for a walk. Like, you only deny yourself where it benefits you, but that's not what it means to follow Jesus. The full denial is, regardless of whether it benefits me or not, is that I am now reattuning my heart and my allegiance, my ownership, my loyalty, my ownership, no longer to me, regardless of whether it benefits me or not. But I am now redirecting my praise and adoration to the supremacy of God and supremely loving him. Like,
Well, and that's the example Jesus gave us.
Yeah. Now
not my will, but yours.
So getting into the fourth point and talking about slave, somebody reminded me of this in Exodus 21. Chris Aird, our chief finance officer, he reminded me of this passage. So let me read this passage. It comes from Exodus chapter 21. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years. But in the 7th year, he shall go free. Now, what's the significance of 7? Is that it's complete, it's perfect. So he'll serve you for 6 years, but 7th year he's going to go free. And in Israel, too, they had what they called the year of Jubilee. So 7 times 7 is 49. So on the 50th year, every person's debt was paid, every slave became free. Okay.
How many times did they do that?
None. Seriously, none.
I know.
All right.
Remarkable.
So he is to serve you for 6 years, but in the 7th year he shall go free without paying anything. What is that called? Grace. If he comes along, he is to go free alone. But if he has a wife when he comes, she is to go with him. If his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free. But if the servant declares, if the servant declares, and if the servant declares what? This: I love my master and my wife and children and do not want to go free, then his master must take him before the judges. He shall take him to the door or the doorpost and pierce his ear with an awl, or an AWL. And he then will be his servant for now life. So if he says, okay, listen, I can go free, but listen, I love you, and and what you have given me, like, I love you, I will now serve you for the rest of my days. But what will he do? He will drive a wooden awl through his ear. So here's what Jesus is saying to the denial part. Is that if you say, listen, I deny myself, like, it's not about me, like, I love you, and now you pick up your wooden cross, and what will you do? You'll pick it up daily, and you will follow him all the days of your life. This is harking back to Exodus 21 about the servant who's been set free. Listen, yeah, you've been set free, but you realize that the grace of your master, and you realize the authority of your master, the power of your master, that is not just a man, it is the cosmic King of glory. Like, no, I will willingly serve you for the rest of my life. And so that's an interesting passage in Exodus that does hint to a degree about what Jesus is saying in Luke 9.
So there is some benefit to the Old Testament.
There is some benefit to the Old Testament, yeah.
Oh, man, that was a great passage. Thank you so much, Dr. Aird. That was good. All right, so another quote you had, which is a doozy. Man, you're talking about the idea of speaking to those listeners that may be going through hell. You said your life is a living hell right now because you don't see yourself as a slave to God. That would lead to the benefit of holiness. Oh, man.
I didn't say that in all of them.
You didn't?
No.
I was in the 9.
Yeah. I don't even know if I said it at 11.
I'm not sure.
I think I said it to a degree.
Okay.
Well, because this is what I'm trying to get. Like, I'm not trying to tell you, I'm not trying to give you the formula that if you follow God, that your life is always going to be heavenly and you won't go through hell. I do believe that there are so many people that they're believers, but they have not approached their life and every area of their life as a slave to God. That they're trying to live out the salvation of Jesus by constantly living out the residue of their sinfulness. Because I promise you, when we died, this is about marriage. I mean, I'm talking about, like, even in a marriage, if you have two people die to their self and two people become slaves of God, I can promise you that marriage will experience functionality and flourishing. Now, I'm not going to tell you it's going to be easy, because it is hard to die to yourself. But that's the power. Here's the thing. That's the power that grace in Jesus' death and resurrection has bestowed on us. It's not that we conjure up that power ourselves. It is readily available to us when we want to absolutely use it. And that's where I'm saying, like, that's where I feel like people live like hell because they have not submitted to heaven. Fully submitted to him. They wanted the Savior without the sanctification.
And without the King.
And that's part of where I'm like, if that's the case, I'm telling you, not that I would want to like judge your heart, but that's part of where I would want to judge your fruit. But if you've wanted a Savior and not sanctification, I don't know if you've met the real Jesus. I really don't know that. And that's where I also apologize, at least in 2, if not all. I didn't do it last night, but I think in all gatherings I apologized if you had never been taught this. because this is what it means to be saved. This is what it means to be saved. And this is how you know you are saved. So again, those things, being a slave, sanctified, aren't the ways to become saved. Those are the ways to demonstrate. Those are the fruits of salvation. So that's where I'm like, if you've wanted a Savior, but you've not wanted sanctification, there's a disconnect there.
Well, and we know that that resonated really deeply with 10 got baptized.
Yeah.
2 after the 9, and I think 11 or 8 after the 11. And some of them had been in church for a long time.
Yeah.
And this message was just hit them right between their eyes.
Yeah. And one of the things that I even asked, because I baptized a few, so I asked them, so are you coming today as this public profession that you have put your faith, your trust in? And then I went through those 4 things: Jesus as Savior, King, Messiah, that he was the sinless sacrifice to pay for the sin debt of the world, that he actually took your place, your sin debt, and that you are bearing your old self. Are you coming? Yes. Okay. And then I said, okay, so then now let me ask you this question: Are you committing because now Jesus has given you the power to now focus on Him, to attune your heart and mind to Him. So now, are you committing to living in the power that He's giving you to faithfully follow Him? So again, you don't have that power. He gave you that power.
Right.
So that's why I asked them, are you committing to leveraging the power that He's given you to focus on Him to live? Yeah. And so it even changed the way I even did the baptisms.
That's awesome.
But because, I wanted them to see, like, hey, this baptism, yes, it signifies that you are a new creature, but it doesn't mean that everything is going to be solved in your life. This is now war, and but He's given you everything that you need for life and godliness.
Right.
And so will you commit to utilizing, living in that power that He's given you? Yeah.
I love that. What a great example of the way you perform baptism being tweaked because of the message. And then you ended. You gave us these definitions of discipleship and evangelism, which I love. I have been using quite often. Discipleship is learning what it means to be human and part of the new human race after the image and likeness of Jesus. And then evangelism, it's a great way to demystify this sometimes scary word of evangelism, inviting people into the good news story of Jesus. So it's this invitation, and then it's this good news story of Jesus, the gospel. And then what is the gospel? Of Jesus through His death and resurrection, and He's in the process of making all things new. And then you ended with this illustration of kind of what comes out of our lives. It seems like it was setting up the sermon series coming up about stress and pressure and all of that, but this final question of who or what reigns in your life. If Christ reigns in your life, then Christ comes out of your life, and that is, that's the fruit, and that speaks to all aspects and all circumstances and situations in our life, and this next series is really going to help us. Walk us through and help us to consider and be more mindful of that in all areas of our life, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, particularly as at least in this series, particularly as it relates to how we cope with stress and pressure. And I'll, in the first message, I'll differentiate what pressure is, what stress is.
Yeah. How
pressure can feed stress, how stress can feed pressure. But I wanted to create this, kind of this image, and I'll just be honest, like, people know. I mean, I think it's no secret that I use AI for images, but I prompt it. So this is part of where I'm not saying Just give me an image. But one of the things too I'm going to be working on is because it needs to be less words for kind of a congregational friendly image.
Yeah.
But what I was trying to get at in that last image is that there is this juxtaposition between old Adam and Jesus. Okay, but I want to stress it does not mean that we, even though we're in Jesus, are going to always perfectly have our words, actions, thoughts, and looks that are completely driven by the fruit of the Spirit of God for the glory of God, okay? But when we do relapse into the residue of the old life, that's where the power, the conviction, not the condemnation. Remember, it's not condemned. We're no longer condemned, but it's the conviction. It is the positive element that reminds us, you're no longer Adam.
Yeah.
You're no longer an Adam. Hey, that's not who you are. That's not what we're about. And so there's this conviction that the Spirit of God. And so the longer we walk with Jesus, the more we go into training, the more we go into discipline, the more we go into those spiritual disciplines, the more we press into being, when I say led by the Spirit, filled with the Spirit, asking the Spirit to fill us, what we'll find is that there will be less of Adam rearing his ugly head in us and more of Jesus rearing his beautiful heart through us. So, but here's the thing. Now, again, you can train, and this is what I now know this, where probably 10 or 15 years ago I would not have preached like this. But I now know enough of, like I say, psychology and human life to know that you can be like I don't mean this I don't mean this facetiously. I don't mean this in a degrading way, but you can train yourself like an animal. You just like we can train a dog to sit, just like we can train a dog to shake. He doesn't. He just knows, or she just knows the command, because we have taught that animal to do that command for a reward base, like almost like a dopamine hit.
Yeah.
You can train yourself, but that's where this is where, again, you've got to understand why do you want to exhibit joy? Why do you want to be humble? Because if you want to be humble because humble leaders get, in some sense, what they ultimately want, well, then that's not humility after Christ. That is humility after animal instincts that get you what you want. So this is part of where, like, I would never say that you can't have a good marriage without Jesus. That would be stupid. There are a lot of people that have good marriages and they don't even know Jesus. But why have they trained themselves to actually have a good marriage? What's the ultimate aim for that good marriage? Because if it's not for the supreme love of God, it is a sinful marriage. Which is why I ended with the question, who or what reigns in your life? Because if Jesus reigns, if grace reigns in your life, everything that comes out of your life wants to supremely love him. And so that's that again. I wanted to really clarify that image, because sometimes every illustration has like a threshold. Yeah. It only goes so far.
Yeah. Awesome.
So, well, hey,
this was great.
Next week, this coming weekend,
you're excited.
Under pressure, stressed out, crush proofing your life. Now, here's the way. If you're listening to this, I'm going to tell you. I may tell everybody, next week.
If they've made it this far, they want to know.
But here's what you need to know: how this series, because people are getting to know my pattern 4 years into it. Now, this is a different series than Genesis. Genesis, I'm just walking through.
Yeah.
Okay. And this kind of series, just like we did last year with How to Lose Your Family in 10 Easy Ways, we're building somewhere.
Okay.
So this first message I'm going to preach, you're going to be like, that's it?
Oh.
That was, okay.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, well, because I'm building. I can't get too far ahead.
You're building over 10 weeks.
I'm building over, 9 or 10 weeks.
Is that what it is? Okay, yeah.
So.
Awesome.
So that's where I'm like.
You're not going to let yourself get too far ahead.
You're going to walk away going, that was it? Yeah, that was it.
Prepare your heart.
and then you'll be like, well, you didn't get much into the Bible. No, probably not. I've got to set up all of these things.
Well, we have this message in Romans to point him to.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. I gave you enough Bible for 2 weeks. No, we're going to get into the Bible, but I'm going to spend quite a bit of time setting it up because I've got to show you.
Okay.
So anyways, I'm just going to leave it at that. Awesome. I gave you enough. So, well, Northland family friends, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Extra Takes. Until next week, blessings.
Thanks for listening to Extra Takes. Be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so you won't miss a single episode.